Welcome to Truck Tech. I'm Thomas Wasson, and in this episode, we're talking about batteries with the folks with Proterra. And one of the big things is about commercial battery solutions. I have questions, fleets have questions. There's lots of different types of batteries, and so really excited to have the folks who help make batteries give us a little bit of a heads up. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest. It's Mabel Feng. She's the director of product at Proterra, and super excited to have you on, Mabel. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, appreciate being here, Thomas. Really excited to talk more about batteries and commercials. That's what we do here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dive right in.
Yeah, happy to. I've been in, the clean tech space broadly for 12 years plus. Background in engineering before I joined clean tech, and a lot of the clean tech space was more on the generation side. So solar, storage systems, alternative grid components, right? How do we get cleaner power to homes and businesses, et cetera? And really just motivated by making a sustainable impact and driving innovation. Engineering is very much in my blood. And really knowing also at the end of the day, what we make and build and provide our communities has a very positive impact. And so as the generation industry kind of started taking off, technologies went from, does it work? It does work, and I have a scale. I saw another set of challenges in transportation. It's this sector, commercial industrial, is one of the largest polluters and emitters. And the more we can do to reduce that, the cleaner environment we can provide for our families and our communities. And so that's kind of what got me to move to mobility, right? How do we turn as many trucks, buses, passenger cars as well over time into cleaner solutions. And then ultimately I ended up at Proterra. I've been here for 3.5 years, really focused on scaling our battery technology and serving as much of the commercial industrial market as possible. It's definitely a exciting, diverse, full of different challenges, both from a technology perspective, policy perspective, as well as a business and commercial aspect. So we've been, doing a whole lot. There's been a lot of improvements in technology, new partnerships, how the different parts of the supply chain work together. How do we work with partners and OEMs to deliver ultimately improved technology and trucks and buses that will work and get goods and people from A to B. Thanks.
And let's dive in because there's a lot of good technology aspects, but for folks who are not as familiar with across the entire that mobility, commercial, industrial space, is it one of those things where it's a one size fits all? If I'm a battery maker, I'm looking at this from an engineering and product standpoint. Is it kind of like Legos where I just get to stack them, or what are some of the things that folks need to consider at the very beginning when they're thinking, well, what if I've got like a municipal or utility and I got a mixed fleet? How do you even begin to think about batteries in general based on like the types of vehicles? Any kind of special things to keep in mind?
Yeah, it's definitely not a one box can fit in any configuration. If you look at on the highway, right, on the roads, these trucks and all these equipment machines, they come in different sizes, right? So there's a whole host of factors. And what we've done over the years at Proterra is build a flexible platform that can cater to a couple different things. And when we think about it as a process, it's really understanding what is that machine or equipment or truck doing, right? How many miles or how many hours does it need to operate? What kind of conditions does it need to be in? Does it always come back, or does it need to have charging throughout, right? If it's traveling across the United States for your Amazon delivery as an example, right? And then ultimately, we look at how can it fit, right? At the end of the day, batteries are one of the biggest things in a truck. And we need to package as much energy into a space without, violating a GVW rating, right? It needs to fit in the right class. And so a lot of these things need to be considered, right? And so there's the size, the XYZ. If it doesn't fit, can't really make it work, right? And then fleets, a lot of these fleets have different types of trucks or vans and whatnot. And it's really hard to take a technology, prove it out in one vehicle, and then have to repeat it for a completely different battery because let's say it didn't quite fit or there's something different needed. So the more A battery platform can address multiple fleets or multiple truck sizes or vans. Usually it helps the fleet scale. And that's a big challenge, right? So ultimately, and at the end of the day, more energy on board, safety is critical. We focus a lot on that at Proterra. And ultimately making sure the batteries, it's not, I happen to drive an electric car, passenger cars, automotive, potentially the cars, you might return it after your 3-year lease and get a new one, right? And so, but in commercial trucks, you're keeping that asset on the road as long as possible or in the field as long as possible. So our batteries need to last. They need to weather really harsh environments. And so it just simply needs to work, no questions asked, right? And so that's a big part. So the performance and the barrier to quality is much higher. And that is really, really key, I think, to really increase adoption in commercial industrial segments.
And before we dive into the types of batteries, y'all recently had some cool releases, new battery technology. One of the things that took me a while to wrap my head around was what goes inside these battery packs. Because I hear a lot of folks about, well, here's a certain size, here's the kilowatt hour. Correct me if I'm wrong. They're kind of like the wafer cookies in that the battery has a exterior shell, but then you have these wafer-like things inside that constitutes the cookie, so to speak, when we're looking at understanding what these chemical changes, technology changes mean for the battery itself.
Yeah, can definitely go into that. So as you noted, we announced ACT, so that was May, about a month ago, one of the largest trade shows in Southern California. And we announced a new form factor variant on our 5th generation platform. And so our platform is called the Onyx platform. We have a couple of variants built off the same module and pack lines, similar architecture, again, so that we can serve different applications without a complete new redesign. And this one is catered towards Class A, right? Which means it's a slightly bigger pack. This Class A is a heavy duty segment that needs a lot more miles. And so we are able to pack more energy into it. And then in the space, we could put 4 to 6 packs easily on a lot of the Class 8 trucks. But technically, you can put a ton more in series in parallel, mostly in parallel to get a larger energy system if needed. But what's inside the battery pack, right? So Proterra we have local U.S., specifically U.S. battery manufacturing facilities. And what we do is we take these components. I'll get back to on the wafer cookies in a little bit. We call them the cells. And then we build modules to encase the cells and then packs, right? The way we do it, you optimize the level of control, precision, performance, and safety on that. So ultimately, we get a aluminum enclosed, very structural, very robust pack that ensures that with the battery management system for each one, that can hook up and put multiple packs together in a truck. But that cell can be a wafer cookie, can be a flat kind of box of some sort. It can be a cylindrical cell, kind of like a very small version of this guy here. Or it could be a pouch cell. There are different form factors and formats that provide the structure of how the cathode and anode materials are kind of wrapped together to create that potential in the cell. And so the wafer cookies are more what they call the prismatic. Proterra is very focused on the cylindrical design, and that's what we built out as our expertise. And that's what served the very heavy duty kind of industrial grade kind of products that we have today.
And what goes into the batteries is just as fascinating. I remember back in the day, people said phone batteries, for instance, I guess are nickel cadmium or something. They'd have a memory. And so some people are saying, oh, well, I've got to charge it a certain way. Then we have lithium-ion. Now we have nickel and other types of stuff. When, as a battery maker, for folks who are getting bombarded with all these different types of periodic tables, and I didn't pay enough attention in my chemistry class, give us a little bit of a rundown about what a lot of these heavy-duty batteries have inside, and are they made a certain way for these heavy-duty applications compared to maybe like your smaller cars and passenger ones? Is there kind of a different kind of vibe or ingredients list we're putting together this package?
Yeah, I also was not very good at material science and chemistry, so I concur. I was good at electrons, so we definitely work with a lot of the cell suppliers. So again, Proterra doesn't make the cells specifically, but we work with them closely, and we actually have an in-house self-testing lab, because what we do is take a lot of the products, and as you can imagine, a lot of the cells may have been originally designed for automotive, right? For a BMW i3 or the Golf, right? Or a Tesla. And then we kind of run it through what the profiles or an environment that simulates more a commercial truck or a school bus, right? So we kind of want to make sure it lasts longer. It can go more miles per day, but also last more years. Can it handle different charging profiles, et cetera, et cetera? And so we look at that and see how much the performance may or may not change over time and for these different applications. So we do a lot of that in-house testing. But what goes inside of it, there are different chemistries, absolutely. And this market is growing, and we're going to need all the many different types of chemistries and designs to really be commercialized to kind of solve how do we get cleaner products out to the market, right? So what we focus on is the nickel-based solution. So we do focus on the nickel. There's also iron-based, what you might hear as LFP or LMFP, and there's different flavors of that. And that really, without going to too much scientist mode, is how much percentage of certain materials are used to affect certain properties. And that sometimes is fine-tuned. Again, not the expert, but sometimes that is fine-tuned to deliver maybe a potential longer life or a different type of charge profile that could be different from the cars that you and I may drive, right, with our families. And we work with our suppliers on that. And that's what a battery manufacturer will say, well, we understand how does the battery going to perform in the field. This is what would help. And then we work in a partnership perspective to kind of help bring that to life. There's a lot of space out there. There's solid state, there's sodium ion. So I'm excited just from an American innovation perspective. A lot of the product and technology work is happening in the US, right? There's a lot of support to do a lot of that here so that we could get, batteries that last longer, can do a lot more things than what, 10 years ago, what we were doing.
That was one of the coolest conversations. I was at ACT Expo, and for the sake of charging, I shall refer to charging as the juice, just because there's so many different types. And so battery makers that I spoke with and EV manufacturers, the infrastructure component was so fascinating because they're looking at the similar types of batteries you would use in your Class 8 heavy duty, and then they'd have little mobile charging. They just put those packs together and they transfer juice between different battery storage locations. So as a battery maker, is that kind of one of the bigger trends we're looking at? Is not only are we seeing these, I'm going to help kit out the commercial vehicle, I'm going to have the right battery, the right size, the right type, but now it's almost like an oil tanker, but instead I'm like a juice tanker. I'm charging this stuff and moving it around as we're seeing build out of this infrastructure. Is that one of those things as well from like a Proterra standpoint? I mean, theoretically, could you just stack a bunch of these things up and have a battery-powered battery transfer?
Yeah. So definitely, it kind of combines my time at Proterra and like my work previously and on-site generation, right? So, I mean, why do these exist, right? These mobile power charging units, right? That you're seeing. And ultimately, charging infrastructure is a hard thing to bring online, right? It takes many years to get enough power to where you want to charge, call it 100 electric vans overnight in a depot. If anybody's worked ever with a utility, it can be challenging, time-wise, permitting, you name it, right? And so what have people done? Well, what if there's it could be mobile, it could just be an off-court, like a back of the meter source solution that just generates enough power to charge these trucks, right? And that's the problem we're solving, right? And charging infrastructure is hard to scale. We're working on it. We definitely are looking to do more, and that's really important to get more trucks electric, as an example, right? And in the meantime, there's these units made of batteries, and I think I'm excited by it because the more people are comfortable with batteries being used in the everyday lives, whether it's storage, backup generation, or on the vehicles, the more comfortable we are in operating our world with electric solutions. So definitely a big part, and I see they play a big part in kind of addressing the market adoption, so that it's a chicken and the egg, right? If you don't have charging, probably don't want to get a truck, right? And personally, it was one of the challenges we had to think about as a family. If we're driving 5 hours to get to Lake Tahoe, is there a charger on the way, right? And that particular stretch, the answer was yes. So we were very comfortable charging, 20 minutes, go to Target, etc., or Chick-fil-A, and then get back on the road, and that was enough charge. But a truck, it needs more charging. It needs to have the infrastructure on the right parts of, I-10, I-90, the big interstates to really, especially in Class A, to be able to make that happen. And then these depot charging, the mobile units you're talking about can be really great, especially if you're in municipal and there's a parking lot or there's a depot and then there's a 6-month delay because the permitting, right? You wheel in something that can be a temporary solution, or you're in an equipment and you really don't have access to a whole lot in a field, in a construction field, and having these units could be great. And you can still operate electric excavator machines and charge the battery on that machine with these storage units.
And I'm kind of curious. It ties into a question about the types of charging. Some things were told me like 250, 350 kilowatt hours for some of these batteries. That's what they could handle. Someone told me a Tesla truck likes the megawatt charging is like 1.2. I did ask if I could fill up a 350 kilowatt with a 1.2. They say they have safety features now, so I don't explode it. But when we're trying to understand that for fleets making purchasing decisions in relation to this new Onyx Strata battery type, what are kind of is there a standard kind of charge, like a standard socket? Is it like 350, or what are we looking at from the recharge side on how these batteries are being used?
Yeah, great question. A lot of movement and progress and work, right? Generally, they talk about kind of level 1, probably less relevant for commercial, level 2 charging, right? And that's 240, 19 kilowatt. And then it kind of keeps going up, right? And the megawatt or charging is like an NCS standard. We're looking to roll out and deploy over the years, right? And so that's more towards that 1.2 that you just pointed out. I think it really kind of depends on a number of things. It depends on how much battery energy or kilowatt hours is on that truck or the bus, and then how much power is in that socket. And then that kind of equation can determine how quickly that truck or bus can charge, right? And so if the goal is to charge during a lunch break or in between shift, the idea is you want to fill up X percentage of the battery within that 20 minutes or whatever the shift time is, and that will determine how much power is needed at the charging. That may or may not be possible, right? Because back to our utility interconnect, it can take a lot to get that amount of power to that location to charge, right? And so we're going to see more and more and higher power charging solutions, absolutely. But for a lot of these larger energy systems, it really depends, again, on the application and use profile. If all these trucks are coming back to the depot, school bus, right? It's coming back, and it's going to sit on the school ground parking lot, then there's plenty of time to charge, and that can be done at a lower power, right? And there's certain advantages to that. So Proterra actually has a lot of experience in this, and so we can work with our OEMs and with the fleets to help figure out, how do we make this work so that in our case, the battery is not necessarily the limiting factor, right? So there are a lot of variables to consider here.
And we're looking to future-proof my fleet. Can I just dig in the ground and put inductive charging? So let's say I got a bus at a bus stop, or I'm waiting at the school. Can I just like wire through the ground and just when it's hanging out? Or is that, I was explained to me because I thought, well, if it's inductive charging like a phone, won't that accidentally like fry my phone? They said, no, it's a different kind. We're doing a different kind of wavelength. But when we're thinking of infrastructure and future proofing, is that something in the battery space, or are we still more focused on getting that right? What can the battery take in terms of charge? What are my time requirements? What are my infrastructure availabilities? Is that kind of like a pie in the sky? Because I thought, why not just make it, why don't you just dig a few rings and
Yeah.
inductively charge?
Yeah. We are focused more on kind of what you said, the charge time, the amount of energy, definitely in kind of I wouldn't say just short term, kind of like next bit. Because I think there can be a lot done, right? That being said, I actually did work on the antennas on the phones back in the day. And so it is interesting to see a much larger version of inductive antennas. And there are pilots for that. And I think there's definitely a use case where that could be applied, right? And it's just figuring out what the right investment is, right? It's going to take a lot more to do, and it depends on ultimate TCO, right? So the calculation of investing, if you're like the fleet owner, and the utility upgrades or the construction change to put the inductive antenna, and then how much does it help your fleet? If what an inductive may or may not charge as fast, and that's again technology being worked on. So it really just depends on investment, return, and of course the complexity of actually digging up the ground as well, right? But I do know there are pilots happening. I'm excited to see what that's going on. And there may be a situation where maybe certain segments will take to it more. It could be automotive, it could be others. It really, again, depends on that. But I think the goal is to prove that it's possible. It can work at some level of economic value. And then it's the segments that can pick it up that will probably adopt it. So from Proterra perspective, something we're monitoring. We have I'm based here in California in a technology R&D center. We have folks looking at kind of much further, maybe not pie in the sky, but more than the next, call it 5 years, and whether it's inductive or other things is definitely something we're looking into as well. But we are focused on providing the battery that can ultimately, if that comes to the market, be charged inductively or more traditional with that plug.
And looking at that longer timeline, one of the issues was regulatory. And so we're looking at some of the changes. What struck me was, in conversation with folks at Expo and others, was that fleets continue to upgrade, as in the growth in terminals and infrastructure and vehicles continues on despite some of these regulatory rollbacks and changes. Tell us a little bit about that, because it was explained to me I spoke with the folks at Better Fleet. They talked about a utility company, and they said that like when people are making these purchasing decisions for batteries, for picking the right choice, this is a years-long effort. And so it appears this is still the results of decisions made from years back. What are y'all hearing on the ground in terms of fleet adoption? And is this changing any minds, or is it to the point now with TCO and existing stuff that we're kind of in a good spot where it's going to tortoise in the hair, so to speak?
Yeah, great question. A lot to probably cover, and I'll try to hit the highlights. I think generally the way I see this market is the technology has proven to work. In some situations, the total cost of ownership is closer to parity. In others, it's further away. And everywhere the supply in the value chain, we're working toward that, whether it's OEM, ultimate fleets, battery manufacturers, and other suppliers as well. What has been really key for all this, as you noted, is policies and incentives to help encourage the shift to electric at various levels, whether it's state or local or federal, right? And with a lot of how the policies have evolved or are continuing to evolve, I think that is causing some kind of wait and see, right? We're seeing market forecasts. I think I saw like market forecasts for at least 25, 26 are showing a 20% lower than probably a couple months ago, right? And that's really a reaction to everybody's kind of just pausing, like instead of just repeating that next order or expanding that order for more trucks for their fleet, et cetera. People are waiting because we're kind of waiting to see how the policies will pan out, specifically as it relates to the ACT Advanced Clean Trucks or the Advanced Clean Fleet. There's been some updates on that, right? That definitely were helping push a certain target percentage of electrification for both fleets and OEM truck manufacturers. And then funding from EPA for ports, clean ports, right? Or school bus. There was a lot of uncertainty on that. And so folks have been adopting the wait and see, and we kind of heard that at ACT as well. But if you look at the forecast, really, it's more we're waiting and seeing, but we're expecting the market to come back, right? And so there's not a whether or not these segments will go electric. It's more just when and how quickly. And so, we're here for the long game. We're focusing on, making sure we can serve as many segments that are looking at electric, can invest in electric, and where the TCO is kind of closer. And then setting ourselves up so that, the recovery of the market, especially in Class 8, it's one of the, it's kind of has the most kilowatt hours total, which is what a battery manufacturer like Proterra will be focused on. As these recover, we'll be in a really good position because we're very focused on battery, on performance, a harsh environment, and we can deliver and continue to perform. So it's an economically attractive option as well.
And we got a little bit of time left. Looking ahead on these segments, I personally was shocked that a large OEM like your Kenworth, through the PACCAR, released the electric EV Class 8 vocational as well as the Class 8 regional haul space. When you're looking at it from a battery maker and partnering with OEMs, despite all the challenges, where are the green shoots right now? Is it the bus? Is it the local driver, the drayage truck, the machinery construction or sprinter vans? Where are you all seeing for folks who are interested? And maybe I'm listening to this, I'm like, hey, I got this mixed fleet. If I got to try to get promoted and tell my boss I need to electrify, what's the one area I need to give him and then make a little slide to slip in one of the meetings?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of bright spots we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of interest in, especially since Proterra is a U.S. battery manufacturer, right? And we localize a lot of our content, or have plans to do so, and we are, well known in the space as we've always been a U.S. battery manufacturing center. We have facilities in South Carolina, so we're seeing interest from equipment. It could be equipment. It could be different slight off-highway applications. We see some medium duty as well, right? That segment, as well as Class 8, right? And so immediate, kind of like the refuse or some of the municipal kind of facilities, right? Trucks. So I definitely see a lot of that. I think and then bus at the end of the day is a big one, because we had concerns. There were some concerns on the funding, but it came back. So anything that was already kind of allocated, was kept. And so I think that's great news. And a lot of these markets, the ones who are less dependent on funding, will continue to go after. So that's what we would recommend. And that's where we're focusing and targeting and growing. And then we'll see, transit bus continue, right? The use case for electric makes a lot of sense for transit. School bus, same. We have some medium duty applications as well, right? As well as, like I mentioned, off highway. So we see bright spots across the board still, and we're really excited to be able to power that with our Onyx platform.
Perfect. Mabel, thank you so much for hopping on the show. It was some really, really great information. If folks want to learn more about Proterra, get in touch, check out the products. What's the best way to get the info?
Yeah, definitely go to our website. Excited, and definitely connect with us on social as well. And of course, hopefully we'll see some of the US shows and conferences.
Perfect. Really do appreciate your time. Check them out, the folks at Proterra. So that's going to be a wrap for this episode. If you're just joining us, we're on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. You can check it out there wherever you find your podcasts. While you're at it, sign up for the Truck Tech newsletter. It goes out in your inbox every Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern. That's a wrap for this episode. Don't worry though, stay tuned. I'll see you again next week.